So, there you are, sitting down with your friends for another session of D&D. You got the super awesome minis, the terrain, and you even wrote a super awesome monologue for the villain that would even make Shakespeare weep. And then, the party gets to the encounter. The first few rounds are snappy, exciting, everyone's getting the blood flowing again. But then, an hour passes. Then 2. The epic battle you planned is slowly but surely turning into a slog. Players start checking phones. What should have been a climactic showdown now feels like you're filing taxes. I have had this exact problem, and I'm sure you have too. Not every combat can be a banger. For me, my combats were getting repetitive, and frankly, I could recognize that they were getting a little boring, and that's ultimately on me. My players were still having fun, but I could tell that combat was becoming a chore that would happen every session or so, and then they could get back to the story, or whatever shopping episode they had planned. So in order to shake it up a little bit, I did something a little outside of the book. It was still D&D, just not this book. I turned to what many players describe as the most controversial edition of D&D. I'm talking, of course, about 4th edition. But before you get those pitchforks out, I'm just offering to give it a chance. Because buried under its controversial design, there were some absolute gems in there. I stole 4 of these gems and slid it secretly into my campaign. And the results? Boring combat transformed into epic, memorable encounters. Today I'm sharing the 4 rules that I stole from 4th edition that has brought my game to the next level. But first, it is I, Sir Bearsworth, guiding creators, shaping worlds, and forging heroes. And the first rule that I wanted to adapt to my game was something that was going to help with the scale of combat. The main question that needed answering was, how do you make a party feel like they are just mowing down enemies that they encounter without having combat for 6 hours? In 5e or 5.5, running more than a handful of enemies will bring the combat to a screeching halt. It's tons of work on your end as the DM, and your players lose all narrative momentum in the session. So, enter our first stolen rule, minions. I'm not talking about these guys, though they could work. In 4th edition, a minion has a very particular property. They have just 1 hit point. Any attack that hits them, kills them. No damage rolls, no tracking HP. The wizard just cast Fireball? By all means, if he wants to roll his 8d6 just to look at the numbers and hear the sound of the dice, by all means. The fighter cleaves through 3 of them in a single turn? It feels pretty heroic. Now your players are feeling like epic heroes fighting against an onslaught of enemies. But here's one of my favorite parts. The common ruling in 4e was that if a minion had to make a saving throw and it passed, they take no damage. I know you're screaming at the screen, but they're supposed to take half. Well, in this case, they managed to dive out of the way and negate all the damage. Here's the thing, it still makes them a threat, but frees up a lot of that administrative burden on your end to keep track of anything. In my game, just as an example, I threw 12 skeleton minions at the party, and they were being led by 2 beefier commanders. The battlefield was a sea of bones. At first, everyone at the table went pale, about as pale as the skeletons. But then when the barbarian ran in and suddenly took out 3 of them in their attack, and then the cleric's turn undead just vaporized a bunch of them, all of a sudden they feel like they have a fighting chance. By the end of the encounter, they left that fight feeling like absolute action heroes. And that was all thanks to this simple rule. The next problem that needed solving was the whole bag of hit points syndrome. Something that's never sat right with me is that a monster at 100% health and 1 hit point is just as effective. A dragon with a single hit point left still breathes fire at full damage. I can describe how badly beaten down the monster is, but if they can still come back with a haymaker as strong as they could when we started the fight, something feels a little off there. Fights just become a linear process of chipping away at hit points, with no change in tactics until the monster drops. This is where stolen rule number 2 comes in. the Bloodied condition. The rule is simple. A creature becomes bloodied once their HP drops below the halfway point of their maximum. And the way I utilize it in my game is as a little bit of a trigger for something else in the fight. When a monster becomes bloodied, something has to change. Think of it like a classic boss fight hitting its second phase. The Manticore, once bloodied, might fly into a rage and suddenly their attacks are doing more damage. A wounded dragon may immediately get its breath weapon back to push back the party that's surrounding it. For me, it looked like this. I had my party fighting a pretty beefy stone golem. The first half of the fight admittedly was pretty standard, but the moment it dropped below half HP, I told the party, deep cracks form across its stone body, and the runes on its chest glow with a unstable energy. On its next turn, its slam attack could now knock players prone, and if anyone got in close and landed a hit on it, a magical shockwave would reverberate out and do a little damage back to them. The fight completely got flipped on its head. Now my players couldn't just stand there and swing on it. They had to change their tactics around. Everyone, but the barbarian, switched over to doing more range-based attacks. The barbarian, of course, thugged it out in melee range. Props to them. But this still signaled to the party that they were making progress, but also that the stakes were getting higher. If you found these first two ideas useful for your game, do me a favor and hit that like button. Also, I'm curious, what's your biggest pain point in your D&D game right now? Let me know down in the comments. But let's jump back to that next rule. Here's a quick rule for situations outside of combat. Not every problem can or should be solved by a sword or a fireball. Some complex situations like a chase scene or a desperate escape can often feel really anticlimactic if it all gets boiled down to one or two rolls. This is where you can take advantage of this third stolen treasure. It may be one that you're already using in your games. Say hello to skill challenges. A skill challenge handles these complex situations through a series of rolls and checks. The party needs to meet a certain number of successes before they meet a certain number of failures. They were a huge part of 4th edition, and they're perfect for moments where you need the party to come together to achieve a evolving goal. Here's just a quick example. The party is escaping a crumbling ruin. To escape, they need to achieve 5 successes before they accumulate 3 failures. On their turn, each player describes what they're doing and make a relevant skill check to go along with it. The barbarian might use their athletics to clear a chasm that opened up. The rogue could use their acrobatics to dodge falling debris. The wizard might use arcana to help stabilize a wobbly platform. And with each success, it brings them closer to the exit. A failure is where it's going to get interesting though. A failed athletics check may mean the barbarian makes it to the other edge but comes up a little short, knocking off a bit of the cliffside, making it harder for others to follow after him. A failed acrobatics check may mean the rogue takes a little bit of damage from that falling debris. This creates a dynamic and cinematic scene that everyone in the party gets a chance to contribute to. It turns a simple roll to escape into a memorable high-stakes encounter. My next problem jumps back to the combat side of things, but more from the top-down perspective. I was running into the problem that monsters, even different types, would sometimes feel strategically the same. Whether it's a bugbear or a hobgoblin, the party's best tactic is usually hit whichever one has the most hit points until it dies. Encounters really lacked a tactical variety to them. The last rule that I stole from 4E completely fixed this. Say hello to monster rolls. In 4th edition, monsters weren't just stat blocks. They had a job. No, I'm not saying the bugbear was an accountant. What I'm saying is the monsters had a certain tactical identity that you would take into combat with. The main roles were brutes, soldiers, artillery, controllers, or skirmishers. And here's how I use them in my game. Say I'm planning an encounter with a group of orcs. I'm not just going to pull up a standard orc stat block. I'll take that stat block and modify it to fit some of those different roles. One orc will be my brute. He gets more hit points, a bigger axe, and his sole job is to hit things hard and soak up damage. I'll have 2 orcs that function as my artillery. They're gonna stay in the back with their longbows, and they'll be focusing fire on the party's spellcasters. And just so they aren't alone in the back, I'll add 1 soldier to guard them. He gets a shield and a higher AC. Suddenly, I don't just have a pile of orcs running at the party. I have now presented a little bit of a puzzle to them. Do they focus down the big brute that's in front? Or do they try and push past him and take out the annoying archers in the back? Will they be able to get past the soldier playing defense? It forces the players to think a little bit more about their next move than just rolling to attack. And this ends up making the monsters feel like a coordinated unit. This is going to transform any generic fight into a truly dynamic challenge for the party. So, there you have it. Minions for cinematic scale, the Bloodied condition for more dynamic fights, skill challenges to handle more complex set pieces, and monster rolls to add a little bit more tactical seasoning to your combat. 4 rules stolen from the black sheep of D&D, and all 4 of them helped revitalize my game. The biggest lesson for me wasn't that these are just good rules. It's that no single edition of D&D has a monopoly on good ideas. 4th edition got a lot wrong in the eyes of the community. But as you can see, it also got some things fantastically right. Even in all of its perceived failures, there's still some gems to find in there. I know right now that 5.5 is in everyone's crosshairs. All I'll say is, don't be afraid to look in unpopular places. Adapt these rules with confidence. I promise you your game will be better for it. Now, what are some of your favorite house rules? Or what's a mechanic you've stolen from another game? Doesn't even have to be D&D. Let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this and want to be tuned in for more DM guides in the future, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But until next time, I'm Sir Bearsworth, guiding creators, shaping worlds, and forging heroes. And I'll see you all at the table. Bye.